Welcome to the first Kerf Screencast. In this screencast, we're going to go over some basic tools that you might use when dealing with stock prices. We're going to show you a lot of tricks here, as much as time will allow, but here's a preview of some of the things that you'll see. We'll show you how to do the open and close for Apple's ticker. We'll show you how to compute the average price. That'll be the volume-weighted average price and the unweighted average price. And then we'll also show you how you can take the techniques that you've learned and apply them to all of the symbols at once instead of just to one symbol at a time. If you want to follow along with the tricks we're showing you in this recording, you can download the Kerf version of the NYSE TAC sample data from the shortened bit.ly link that's shown there. This will save you the trouble of having to parse the NYSE TAC data yourself. You can just load this file right into Kerf. I'm Kevin. My email is up there, kevin@getkerf.com. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to be copying and pasting commands from a text file I generated beforehand. This file name that you see here, I unzipped the tar.gz file that I showed you earlier and put it in a TAC directory. This read from path command is going to load the table into memory completely, in contrast with the open table command, which would just map it. And then we'll store it in this variable t. And from there we can perform our operations on t. Here's the table with all the data we care about for this exercise. This was a fairly typical day. There were about 33 million individual trades that happened, and the number of tickers that were present during the day is about 7,800. The first thing that I'm going to show you how to do now that we have the table up and running is how to get the unique collection of tickers from the database. As you can see, this is just a basic SQL query. Sim is the column on T, and we're selecting the unique values in Sim from T. And this gives us that 7,800-ish number that we mentioned earlier. Now we can take a look at a basic count query. We're going to count the number of trades that involved Apple. If you look at this, you can see it's a traditional SQL query. Count star in the center there represents an operation that occurs on the entire table or subtable when you select subtables. There's a where specification at the end, and we're choosing items from the symbol column that contain AAPL. Notice that it's surrounded in single quotes. Kerf also supports double quotes, and those are the string types that you'll see. There were about 180,000 trades that involved Apple. Let's try something a little bit more advanced. The query that I've pasted here will show you the average value of a trade taken over all trades on all symbols that occurred throughout the day. If you'll note, we use the as keyword there in the middle, and what that does is rename the column from the default. What's happening there in the main computation is that each of the prices are being multiplied by each of the volumes, and then we're taking the average of that, which means summing them all up and then dividing by the number of rows. Let's take this exercise a little bit further. Now we want to know the average value of a trade for each symbol, and the way that we're going to do that is with the group by clause. So it's going to select out in subtables all of the tables corresponding to individual symbols, and then it's going to do that same operation before on them and return that result set as a single table. So let's see. We get a table back with a row for each symbol, and the values in the value column correspond to the amount of money that changed hand for each trade, the average amount of money. If we want to know the closing price for a given stock, We'll restrict our query using the where clause to select only trades that involved the Apple symbol, and then we'll operate on the price column. We'll use the last function, and the last function will give us the last price in that restricted column, and the last price is the closing price that we're looking for. We can extend this idea to select all closing prices for all the symbols, and the way that we do that is again using a group by clause, grouping on the symbol. We have a slight variation here in that we're going to save that table in the closes variable, since we might want to use it later. If we instead want to see the opens for all the symbols, then all we have to do is replace that last function by the first function. This next query will show you how to take the average price per share for each trade for each symbol. Now this is the unweighted average price per share. To restrict that query to just Apple, add a where clause to your SQL select statement and specify the sim to be AAPL. There's a reason most people don't like unweighted average prices, and that reason is that the unweighted average price ignores the volume or the amount of shares that exchanged hands for each trade. So one way of thinking about an unweighted average price is if you just took the prices column and then averaged that. And what's wrong with that is it totally ignores the volume column. So if you have, for instance, one trade that occurred at a very high price with a lot of shares, and then a lot of trades that occurred at a smaller price with a smaller number of shares, then it will average out to be something that looks very small when in fact it was actually a very high price for the day. So if you subscribe to that notion that the volume has an effect on what the true average is for the day, then you want something that's referred to as the VWAP, or the volume weighted average price for a given symbol. So the way that we can compute the VWAP for Apple is with this sub expression here in the middle. So you see the first token grouping there is summing the price times the volume. And so what that is the sum of all the values of the trades, and then we're dividing it, the slash means divides, we're dividing it by the sum of the volume. So that was the sum total of all the number of shares that exchanged hands during the day. So we're dividing all the value by the number of shares, and that should give us the price per share. Now, if we want to see the VWAP for all the symbols, we just add our group by clause as before. If you have any questions, you can contact me directly at kevin@getkerf.com, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. And again, if you want to follow along, that file is at bit.ly/tac-sample.